This story is about a boy named Logan. He is an orphan. Since his childhood, his upbringing is taken care of by Mr. Lin. Even the servants in the house looked down on him and couldn't wait for him to disappear. As Logan grew older, for some unknown reason, Mr. Lin started to insist on marrying his granddaughter, and eventually they got married. This girl looked up to the guy just like everyone else. In the 3 years after the wedding, she never once let him touch her, nor did she say a single affectionate word to him. And a few days ago, her sisters organized a real conspiracy. The girls pretended as if the guy was harassing them, took a picture of it on their phones, showed it to the right people, and kicked Logan out of the house. You can say their plan worked perfectly, but how to live now, poor young man? The girls even found people who beat Logan in the street. They did it not only with their fists, but also with wooden clubs, which if you hit too hard can break a bone. But that's what triggered the boy's awakening as a warrior. A huge golden dragon appeared before his eyes, and he was in the middle of the ocean, flying over the water. Logan had no idea what was going on or who was standing in front of him. The dragon said that his apprentice could not live such a miserable life, and he was ashamed that such an apprentice had been born. Could this monster be Logan's father? Then the dragon turns into a strong, pumped-up man who has magical powers. Today Logan will inherit the red liquid of this man, and can become as strong as him. The main thing is that the guy should use it correctly, and develop in this direction. The final stage of the transformation is underway. Logan wakes up in the ward. The first thing he saw was a beautiful lady who saved the guy and brought him to the hospital. On his body was a large number of abrasions, which after waking up began to heal themselves. Since the guy is already clearly better, the girl's mission was accomplished, so she decided to leave the ward. Logan politely asked her name, and said he wanted to return the favor for saving her. This lovely lady's name is Emily. First of all, she was very surprised to see that there wasn't a single injury on the guy's face, and secondly, she did it for her grandfather. The fact that he has a terminal illness and is confined to a wheelchair, the doctor has given him an ultimatum. So the girl hopes that she can trade her good deeds for a couple extra days of life for him. Since Logan knows a little about medicine, he offers his help and says he can see the patient. Meanwhile, with the grandfather was his personal physician, who did nothing but reassure him, and also sold his courses of pills. In general, he was just profiting from a man who was about to pass away. As soon as the guy walked into the room, he immediately said that the patient was definitely not well. If he wasn't treated properly, he would be in danger. Of course, the doctor who came here just to make money didn't like it and started to challenge everything, saying that he is the best doctor in town and he can't be contradicted. In this case, if something goes wrong, is this businessman ready to take full responsibility? He confidently answered yes, because in case of anything he can always call any incident an accident, without any regrets. Suddenly, right in front of his eyes, his grandfather gets worse, coughing up red liquid. But how could this happen? The doctor said he was fine. Emily started sounding the alarm and asking to call for an ambulance, but it was too late, and Logan was the only hope. At this point, Grandpa's body was so exhausted he couldn't hold on any longer. If the guy manages to save him, then Emily's family will never forget it, and will be grateful for the rest of their lives. Applying magic, namely the ability to restore, Logan began to try to save the patient. If good people are not rewarded, then soon there will be no good people left, so it is necessary to make every effort for a positive outcome. Then, as you might expect, a miracle happened. Grandpa slowly started to come to his senses, and the guy was lying on the floor at this point. Because he had given away too much energy at once, he needed just 5 minutes to recover a little bit. Grandpa will never forget that kindness, and asked what Logan wanted most. The guy replied that he didn't need anything, because if Emily hadn't saved him, he would have lost his life and couldn't help. The most important character here is solely the granddaughter. Her good deeds led to such a positive outcome. Emily was very pleased that she was being emphasized so much. She approached the guy by name and offered absolutely any help. Logan only told her his name once, and the girl filled him in. This shows that the girl is genuinely grateful, and always listens attentively to the conversation. Emily also asked how long her grandfather had left to live. He heard the question, and was very optimistic, saying that he would live as long as he had to, not to think about it, but to invite Logan to dinner. The guy didn't want to stay here for long, because he was looking for any excuse to leave as soon as possible. At that moment, he gets a message on his phone from a gang of guys who beat him up on the street. They got word that Logan had survived, so they warned him. If you want to live, you have to disappear from this town and never be seen again. Since the guy was starting to get really strong, he didn't know what to say to that. After Logan took care of everything, he promised to come over and check on his grandfather. Emily wanted to do something to thank him, so she said she'd give the kid a ride. This old man turned out to be not easy. He even has his own personal security. Since Logan now communicates directly with his granddaughter, the grandfather ordered his workers to check him out completely. In the meantime, Logan reached his home, where he was greeted from the doorstep by his disgruntled wife. Apparently, she had no idea what her husband had just been through. She thought the guy just took off without warning. Turns out the bitch wasn't in the mood to hear her husband's stories today, so she just asked him to sign the divorce papers if he decided to leave the family. By the way, the wife has already found a worthy replacement for her current husband. It's time to introduce him. The name is Mr. Yang. He's very famous in his circles. No need for jealousy in this case, because Logan never loved this woman. He was just a servant who fulfills absolutely any whim. You could say it's a day of celebration. According to his wife, it's an honor for men to serve her, so if you're not satisfied, quickly sign the document and get out of here. That's what he did as of today. Logan no longer had anything to do with this family. The girl didn't like such impertinent behavior, so she said a few affectionate words to her ex-husband. And then together with their new boyfriend, they saw what a hottie picking up Logan in his expensive car, and started biting their nails. They couldn't understand how this loser managed to pick up such a girl. Anyway, the old man just called his granddaughter and said he had some business with Logan. In the meantime, the personal bodyguard reported to the old man the operative information he had managed to get. In brief, they managed to find out that the boy was an orphan, and he was raised by Mr. Lin, and then married to one of his granddaughters. Based on this information, the man realized that Logan could not have any medical education. All these years he had just served the Lin family. Maybe the old man overestimated him, but then how did he manage to cure the patient? Was it just luck? Logan asked Emily to take him to a hotel to settle in and do his business, and then he raced to the girl's house to continue his treatment of her grandfather. Before he left, Emily told him that if he needed anything, he could always count on her. When the guy was alone, he realized what a mistake he had made. How could he just cure a man? How could he justify himself? You can't just tell everyone that he's the son of the dragon and can heal people. His medical data is really good. Its effectiveness depends on the amount of spiritual power the mage has. In his head, Logan managed to find the Book of 10,000 Ways. It contains the recipes for making the immortality pill. It should definitely help. He asked one of the maids to bring him some herbs and a pot to make this miracle potion. Meanwhile, the old man consulted with the doctor and tried to find the best treatment option for himself. One of the options was a red fluid transfusion, but because of the patient's advanced age, the doctor made no guarantees that the old man would survive the procedure. The granddaughter begged him to let Logan come here and let her examine him again. The only thing the old man will regret is not finding a good home for his granddaughter. Logan burst in with a pill he just made. It had a horrible odor that almost made people faint. It's a traditional pill made of local herbs. The guy was making it for the first time, but it's sure to cure the patient. The doctor looked down at the boy and asked, "Do you really think you are God to create magic pills? It may not look the best, but its effect will not disappoint, and there are no other options in principle, so it would be quite foolish to refuse it." Emily insisted that her grandfather try it because there was really no other option. And he didn't see how he could swallow something that smelled so bad. The doctor took the pill in his hands and analyzed it. he confirmed that the pill was made of traditional herbs, so there would be no harm done. And if it can cure the gentleman named Sun, the doctor will apologize to Logan and call him master. Well, since it wouldn't do any harm, Grandpa decided to try it, even though he was very afraid. The doctor wasn't sure if it would help, but the boys didn't give up hope. After taking the pill, Mr. Sun began to feel as if he was enveloped by a light spring breeze, strength running through his veins. He began to feel incredible. Life began to play with completely different colors. To put it mildly, the doctor was shocked. Emily couldn't believe it, and the old man was happier than ever. He was not only cured but also rejuvenated. Now he could definitely have a transfusion of red liquid to complete the healing process. The doctor tried to ask the guy what the pill was, but no one ever tells me secrets like that. Mr. Sun called Logan his savior. For giving his grandfather life, he gave him this whole villa. From now on it belongs to Logan. The kid tried to say no, but he's not gonna get it this time. That's how you get what you've been working for years. Today was more like a dream. The only annoying thing is that the ex-wife, who seems to be stalking around, seems to be divorced, but they haven't stopped seeing each other. She called her ex-husband an empty nester for coming on the property. Then standing next to Emily, the guy said he lives here now. Of course the sweet couple didn't believe it at first, and started laughing out loud all the way down the street. Then a very serious security guard came out of the grounds. He doesn't like to see any conflicts right under this yard resolved without his involvement. Emily ordered him to never interact with these people again, and to teach them a lesson. The girl was the first to get hit in the face. It was a pretty hard blow. She was even thrown a few meters away. Since the new fiancé knew the guard personally, he decided to ask him what was wrong. It was an order from the boss, and it is not negotiable. The guard gets paid, so he should not care who he hits in the area. Today Logan was in the role of a chef. He fed his new girlfriend with a lot of different dishes. According to Emily's reviews, the guy cooks tastier than the best chefs of this city. The girl could not understand how his ex-wife decided to divorce. This man is just perfect. Logan admitted that he had never actually slept with his wife. The girl wondered if she had a chance to be the first partner he would sleep with. Apparently they both thought about it, because they got very red. The guy got so excited that his heart started to jump, which could be a sign that he cared about Emily. The guys decided to get away from this topic, and enjoy a delicious lunch, which was prepared by the new best chef of this city, according to the girl of course. In any case, she still has time to get to know Logan better, but it seems that she has already started to fall in love. On the way home, the chauffeur told the girl that this guy did not have a good reputation, should not get close to him, because Emily is the eldest granddaughter of the Su family, a real pearl. Her boyfriend should be appropriate, and this one is not suitable. Certainly from the chauffeur to hear such a thing was offensive. Who is he to talk about it? Especially about the man who saved his grandfather. Despite the bad reputation and so on, the girl was sure that by the end of the month this guy would definitely become famous and rich. 3 days later, the guy was sitting in the middle of the forest, trying to perform some magic, but the energy of the mountain he was on wasn't enough to make it work the way it should. Luckily there's a lot of spirits gathering in the area, so hopefully it won't take long for Logan to perfect it. But still it will not be enough. He needs to become even stronger as soon as possible. The boy already dreams of finding a legal way to marry Emily. Only now he catches himself thinking that apparently he really fell in love with this girl. In his head he was thinking that he did not deserve her. It is very disturbing. Now Logan's biggest challenge is to get to the top and become the man who's worthy of it, and to make sure no one even thinks about questioning that. Meanwhile, his ex-wife's new husband, along with his gangster friends, have approached the guy's new territory. They were armed with bats, and probably each of them has some cold weapons in their pockets. Today they wanted to beat up Logan alone. They also wanted to talk to Emily, but she is not here. Before the guys start their dirty business, the boy decided to warn them that the original owner of this villa is Mr. Sun, and it is unlikely that the bandits will get away with breaking into the territory of such an important man, and it will be even worse if they beat up a close family friend. The guys really wondered why they had to go to all this trouble, so they decided to ask their boss what they should do. He ordered Logan to be destroyed and said he'd take full responsibility. The men heard that and immediately ran into battle. Too bad they didn't listen to the guy. You could say he was saving their lives. Since his strength had increased significantly, with a single slap, the guy got rid of one bandit. The blow was so powerful that the opponent flew a few dozen meters away. The other bandits started to say they probably wouldn't be able to beat him. So the groom hit him and said they had to fight if they wanted a secure old age. Then Ian got a call on his phone. It was his girlfriend. She said that her grandfather was about to lose his life and needed to go to the hospital immediately. Logan asked what happened to Mr. Lin. But the groom said that the guy had nothing to do with that family anymore, and no one would tell him anything. Despite all the bullying by Mr. Lin, the savior and the man who raised the guy, Logan decided to try to contact the doctor who took care of the old man and asked him for help. In order not to waste time, the guy told the thugs to take him to the hospital by car, which they liked to agree to. Meanwhile, the ex-wife was in tears, begging the doctor to save her grandfather somehow. She said she would pay any money, but the problem was not only in them. This hospital is simply not able to perform an operation of this level. Then Jan came to the doctor. He asked him to make the old man last at least another week, which would be enough time to solve everything with the documents, and properly rewrite the property. Suddenly Logan walks into the hospital, along with a doctor who has recently become his friend. They asked to use the operating room to treat Mr. Lin's emergency. The second doctor was very happy to have such a professional. He said he would organize everything. The sweet couple was told to get out of here because they'd only be in the way, and Logan went into surgery with the doctors to help the man who raised him. The anger of the young was overwhelming. Apparently even the ex-wife was beginning to question whether she'd made the right choice when she divorced her husband. Meanwhile, Emily and her grandfather were relaxing on the balcony, looking at the beautiful views. Sun assumed his granddaughter was thinking about Logan. She tried to deny it, but Grandpa said that he had lived a long life, and it was not easy to deceive him. So Emily decided to ask him directly how Grandpa would feel about their relationship. He said that if his granddaughter wants it, he will organize everything for her. I asked him to invite him to visit in 3 days and talk about everything. Grandpa would do anything for his granddaughter, as long as Logan could handle the responsibility. If everything goes well, the girl will publicize the relationship. The man who is not needed by the Lin family will be needed by the Su family. In the meantime, good news from the hospital: the operation was successful. Mr. Lin will be able to return home tomorrow. Mr. Lin was very grateful for the help. Although the kid grew up in this family, but they treated him worse than a dog, despite the fact that he did a lot of useful things. Since there was a divorce, no one would allow the guy to give the gentleman a pill. Because of this, had to do just that: call a specialized doctor and ask him to make a quality operation. The doctor asked not to call him officially anymore, because he considers Logan his master, and that's not up for discussion, so they're clearly friends. Then Ian came up to the guys, along with his assistants, who had brought the guy here, by the way. It was obvious from their faces that they didn't want to fight. As they say, you remember shit, that's what it is. There was a security guard in the building who saved the day last time. When Ian saw him, he didn't want to fight either. The bandit thought he'd be the first to say hello, but he didn't. The man went to Logan first, and apparently forgot about Ian. Once it was over, the guard said he would give Logan a ride home in his car. Ian was in shock. He couldn't understand what was going on. He even dropped his cigarette. The thing is, at Emily's behest, the guard had organized a small banquet in the guy's honor, and urged him to come. Logan wanted to refuse since he wasn't really interested, but the guard went to extreme measures. He knelt down and said, "If Logan doesn't attend the banquet, Emily will fire the guard and never take him to the gate again, so you have to come at least to save the man his job." Well, since the banquet was organized at Emily's request, the guy agreed. He found out the time, the address, and said he would definitely stop by. The security guard and all his coworkers were happy to have a job to do, then promptly handed the guy an invitation. Ian got very demoralized at his workers, sent them far away, picked up his phone and started calling someone. From the look on his face, he was up to no good. The banquet was held at the Palace Hotel, which is the most luxurious 6-star hotel. The people who live there are the real elite of society. All the guests were very well dressed. Since Logan doesn't attend such events, he didn't even have anything to wear but a t-shirt and old jeans. To be honest, he felt very awkward. The first people he met were former classmates. They had no idea it was a party in Logan's honor, so they treated him like a regular classmate. The guy refused to dialogue with them, arguing that he had an appointment with someone else. This made the guys laugh, mostly the woman, who assumed Logan had come here to apologize to his ex-wife. Apparently she finds it funny to make jokes about people's hurt feelings. Of course, the guy did not tolerate such insults, and replied that for those years that they had not seen each other, the girl had not changed much except for more wrinkles. In response to this, classmate began to try to threaten her authority, which is practically non-existent. In general, a real quarrel broke out between them, just a little bit more and it came to a fight. But between them became another classmate. It was a cute girl of low height in a gorgeous red dress. In his student years it was the person who cared about Logan more than for himself, and never gave him an offense. By the way, her name is Ruby. He wanted to punish Ruby for her courage, so he threatened her that he would do it, and no one would say a word. Logan was a simple man. He sees danger and eliminates it, so he gave the upstart a hard punch in the face with his fist, so that he would know his place and how to behave. The girls were shocked. It looked really cool and unexpected, at least from Logan. At that moment the guy looked completely calm. He just did what he had to do. No doubt Ruby was delighted. It was too impulsive an act not worth getting into. Any adequate man would say that it was definitely worth it, because today they're laughing at one girl, tomorrow at another. They should be taught a lesson. This lady was obviously upset that her young man got punched in the face, especially by someone like Logan. She said she was going to bury the kid right there, and ordered her guards to grab him. The kid's personal bodyguard, his name is James by the way, as soon as he heard the sounds of the fight, went straight up to the floor. He personally apologized for overpowering his master Danger. The classmates didn't even know what to say about it. They were just in shock. They began to beg for forgiveness and mercy, but Logan would have the last word. James also heard that someone was going to bury someone here, and to do that, they'd have to get rid of the floor. The girls started begging the guy to forgive her for the sake of their past together. Logan apologized and said she deserved it, so he wouldn't mind burying her right here. The guy and James went into a separate room with a lot of security, and they gave him a gift from Mr. Cheen. Since the guy was not interested in tobacco and alcohol, he only took a credit card, and hoped there would be no more gifts. James also announced that the Su family was planning a business party with all the bigwigs in town, which meant that Logan wasn't the only one invited. Unfortunately, the guard had to invite the same Lin family, and now he was worried that he had offended Emily by doing so. Logan didn't mind trying to work it out. James was extremely grateful. For this he gave the guy his whole outlet, and hoped that it would be enough as a thank you for his help. Logan pretended that this gift was nothing special, but deep down he was very happy, because this outlet can make a lot of money. Deep in the night after the banquet, the guy went outside, when suddenly his phone rang. It was Grandpa Lin. He said he wanted to talk to Logan right away. Without wasting a minute, the boy went straight to him, and soon he was in the same room with him, holding his hand. Grandpa admired the young man. Even though he hadn't treated him well when he was a kid, the guy still came to the rescue. Logan asked him not to say that, because if it hadn't been for his grandfather, he probably wouldn't be alive right now. As it turned out, Lin had called him to talk about it. It turns out Logan wasn't really an orphan. 20 years ago, when the family was fishing by the sea, at that time the young grandfather met a strange man. He stood over the water, and in his eyes there was not a bit of fear in the face of warships. During a fierce battle all the warships were destroyed. he was like an invincible god of war. After the battle, he entrusted Lin with something. It was little Logan. The warrior promised to take the newborn as soon as his wounds healed. However, the next 20 years spent like a blink of an eye. It was because of his blessing that the Lin family took their current position. Grandpa was in tears, talking about how the family felt bad for the guy, and asked him to have lunch with him just once. The next morning, the guy went to the Su family's mansion to see the family. He is now telling Mr. Sien about the new pills he brought with him. Their main function is to replenish the life force by inflaming the chi energy in the patient's body. Then a man named Riley walks into the room, with 3 bodyguards. He's no ordinary hustler. He's wondering where Logan learned how to make these pills. The guy introduced himself and answered that he was somewhere on the 2nd level of chi purification. He had no clan or family. This answer made the master laugh a little, because it was impossible not to be a member of a clan and have such abilities. They are not taken from the air. Recipes are passed down from generation to generation. But this is still a flower. Most of all, Riley was interested in whether the guy's abilities do not have demonic essence. Emily sensed that she was getting a bad smell, and started to stand up for the guy. Because in her opinion, a man with a demonic essence couldn't cure a person in front of all the witnesses. Such things were just beyond the control of bad people. Riley assured her that there were many ways to do such things. You could cure a person with firewood, miasmas, and poisonous insects. No one's ever seen the guy practice, so how do you know he's innocent? On the one hand, that's the right point of view, but on the other hand, the master also has no evidence to prove otherwise. Riley was clearly tense, so Logan tried to calm him down, but to no avail. In response to this kindness, the master hit the guy, and said that only force could judge them. Logan tried his best to refuse the fight. After all, this master is a friend of Mr. Sien. How can he look him in the eye after beating up his friends? Riley said if the guy could even touch him, then he would recognize his strength. In that case, the guy had to accept the challenge and unleash his potential a little. The fight lasted just a few seconds. The guy even overdid it a little. Riley fell to the floor and couldn't move. Logan must have pressed a couple of pain points that could close the body for a certain period of time. Mr. Sien was really excited. He didn't think the kid was that strong. Emily didn't stay away either. She asked how the guy was feeling and if his arm hurt. The guy scared the hell out of the girl, because if he lost this fight, he would have been kicked to the curb. Emily pinched him for that rash act. Now he was really hurting. In any case, Logan was on his feet, so there was no need to worry so much about him. The girl hoped it would be the same in the future. The phrase "in the future" caused the guy to ask a few questions as to what it could mean. Emily was embarrassed to answer, and said that it just occurred to her. Standing on the balcony guy to invite one more person to a business meeting, if of course it could be done. In principle, Emily was not against it. It is not difficult for them to add another plate and a spoon to the table, but whether this person is really needed at the business meeting. The girls wanted to know what kind of relationship they had with Logan. The boy hesitated and didn't know what to say. It was even insulting, if he hadn't made up his mind since those days. Well, if there was no clear answer, the girl knows what to do in such cases and how to get an answer to her question in a different way. Making cute eyes, she asked if she was going to be bullied in the future. Would Logan come to her rescue? The guy vowed that as long as the girl was near him, no one would dare touch her, then took her hands and pulled her close to him so that she could feel the seriousness of his intentions. Unfortunately, Sien came to the balcony and interrupted this romantic moment. The thing was that Grandpa had gotten a rare medicinal plant for the boyfriend. He couldn't help but tell about it. By the way, Emily was going to the auction today, so she asked Grandpa if she could take the boyfriend with her. He was fine with it, but there's one problem: he needs to be dressed for the event. To solve this problem, the guys quickly moved out to the store. Emily led the boy to one of the most expensive boutiques in the city. To put it mildly, Logan felt awkward. He realized that he would not soon be able to buy such things for himself. But if the guy would finally start dressing up a lot, the others would stop looking down on him, so he would have to go to the store as soon as possible. There was a gorgeous white suit that fit Logan perfectly. He wasn't used to such things, but as they say, you get used to good things quickly. And why only before Emily had not noticed that her lover was a real model. From so many compliments the guy was even shy. They still looked down on the guy and smiled snidely at him. They had heard that Emily was going to the auction, so Ian decided to warn her right away that he was going to buy everything there. They had heard that Emily was going to the auction, so Ian decided to tell her that he was going to buy everything there. This information upset the girl a little, but where he had so much money to say so confidently. Finally, it was time for the auction itself. The event was held in one of the largest shopping centers of this city. The participants took their seats and were already actively raising the bids for the offered goods. As expected, Ian named the most huge sums in the room, and his wife just praised him for it. The highest price he named was 1.5 million, but when everyone fell silent because they had the opportunity to compete. Emily quoted 3 times that amount, 5 million. The whole room was speechless. After counting to 3, the announcer banged the gavel on the table and congratulated girl number 8 on her ownership of the eternal love ring, and now the auction took a 15-minute break. Everyone stood around and applauded the young couple. Only the haters stood back and bit their nails. Eventually, the ex-wife couldn't take it anymore and started pointing her finger in Logan's direction. She wanted to transfer that ring for her wedding, and Emily ruthlessly denied her that opportunity. The guys smiled and said, "You can't buy a new ring because if the person is used, the ring must be the same." For some reason, Ian decided to be a suck-up. He reassured his wife and said that if he had known in advance, he would have given in right away. Apparently, a lot of women like this ring. Meanwhile, for the girl, they brought her a new ring for 5 million. By the way, and who said that Emily really likes this ring? In fact, the girl thinks that such a couple as Jan and this weak-minded do not deserve such a ring. It was bought only out of principle, not to give it to other hands. In general, rings with this design the girl does not sympathize. So right in front of her current boyfriend's ex-wife, she throws the ring in a small body of water. If someone needs it badly, that person can go and get it. To put it mildly, it was a shock, so she's the kind of person who can throw away a $5 million ring so easily. In the backdrop of this event, Jan promised his wife to buy the last lot of the auction for her. Logan really felt sorry for the ring that Emily had thrown away, and she in turn was pleased. There were plenty of rings like it. Moreover, it was necessary to do it. A person that trying to humiliate another person would be humiliated first. In short, it was just sweet revenge. Meanwhile, the last item of this auction was shown on stage. On the mannequin hung a simply beautiful necklace with a huge diamond. Every woman dreams of such a necklace, but not everyone can buy it. Logan considered it a matter of honor to buy it for his beloved. So he snatched the number in his hands and began to raise the rates. Meanwhile, the cost reached already 3.5 million. In order not to say too many words, the guy decides to raise the price immediately to 5. In the hall at once all quieted down. People did not understand what kind of man is ready to lay out such a sum. This time Ian wasn't going to give in, and he didn't understand why Logan was the one holding the number, and not his girlfriend. The next price that was offered was 5.5 million. Ian's face clearly lost its joy. Apparently he realized he couldn't win. The card the guy got as a gift has 10 million on it, plus 35 million in profits from the shopping street. Even if you spend more than half the money to buy this jewelry, there's still money left over. It's a win-win. Next price is 6 million. I couldn't believe Logan was still pulling it off. Let's see what kind of figure it comes to. To any increase in price, Logan responded instantly with the same. Each increase was always in the neighborhood of 500,000. Toward the end, when the amount became too large, Jan began to raise each bet by 10,000. So I shameful figures should be ashamed to bring in such an establishment, but in desperation he forgot about it. To keep it all going, Logan had to make one of the toughest decisions of his life. From a bid of 8 million, he raised it to 20 million. The guy gets ownership of a piece of jewelry called a crystal kiss. After the auction, the youngsters ran out of the room, because people started literally chasing them. They got into the car, and finally had a moment to be alone. Logan had really managed to surprise a lot of people with just one wave of his hand, and he had a big future. But the guy never got cocky, and he said it was all thanks to Emily. And now the solemn moment, the process of putting the jewelry on the beloved woman, she of course happily agreed. You could say it fit her perfectly. From the outside it may seem that Logan is more happy than the girl, but it is not so. In fact, she is overwhelmed with great happiness, which she is just shy to show. At such a crucial moment, Logan decided to ask Emily if she would marry him if he could get back on his feet in the future. The girl took his hand and said, "When true love is born between people, they don't care about each other's status. Besides, Emily is sure that in the near future the guy is going to grow incredibly in all plans." While Logan was trying to propose to his new girlfriend, his ex-wife was swimming in a body of water and trying to find the ring Emily threw away. How quickly things changed. Another accident happened at a construction site. It would seem that this place is surrounded by mountains and rivers. They promise riches. Isn't that a good sign? Everything could be written off as an accident, but a worker falling from scaffolding sounds impossible. Hundreds of screws could have come loose at the same time. Now there are hardly any people on the site. Some are sick, some have family problems, and there are fewer and fewer of them because of what's the job worth. When Logan came to the site, he said something else serious had happened. James was so happy to see him. The guy suggested maybe it's the mountains and the rivers. Fog comes down from the mountains and forms a moisture accumulation. No matter how hard you try to fight it, it's almost impossible to fix. But what do we do now? Maybe we should stop work until the problem is solved. Logan said there's no need to suspend anything yet. The problem is that if you fix it, even after repairing it, the problems are bound to continue. It's a vicious circle. Even a master like Jacob doesn't have the power to help in this situation, and Logan just appeared out of nowhere and started handing out instructions, which seemed a little strange to the master. Jacob agreed to do as the boy suggested, but if it didn't work out, he had to apologize to the master. Jacob agreed to do as the boy suggested, but if it didn't work out, he had to apologize to the master. So they agreed to let time judge them. A worker was invited to the site, given a shovel in his hands, and told to dig down at a certain spot. The hole had already reached a depth of 5 meters, but nothing could be found. James began to doubt the whole thing. If he offended the foreman, he wouldn't find another one like him. Maybe he had called Logan for nothing after all. When suddenly the worker in the pit shouted that he had found something. It was some kind of magic box, and inside it lay a blade. It was a rather unconventional shape, the kind you can't just buy in a store. The guys couldn't believe their eyes. This object that was found brings real trouble to those who are near it. From now on you can say for sure this construction site is cursed. There will absolutely always be some kind of action going on here. What to do now in this situation? A huge amount of money has been invested in this project. The houses are almost finished. Jacob recognized that there was nothing he could do to help the situation. Maybe the guy knows what to do. Logan looked at the box and said he would take it back to his house to avoid any more problems. James was very grateful. If it worked out, he would do anything for the guy. You could say it was another great opportunity to make money and raise his status. Jacob finally realized that Logan wasn't a normal person, so he wondered where he got his powers at such a young age. The boy replied that he had no family or clan, so he wasn't going to talk about it. Unbelievable, and why Jacob hadn't heard of him before. It was decided to take this box to the mountains where the guy usually meditates. There he was able to remember that he felt a similar energy from Mr. Sien. Apparently someone is targeting their family, and wants to harm, wondering just who it needs. Logan sits down in his favorite pose for energy, but this time he's going to use it to destroy the enchanted object. By the way, there's an important meeting tomorrow, and Logan refuses to believe he won't be able to catch the culprit by then. It's the next day. It's still 4 hours away from the start of the event, but you can already see many famous faces. The event itself will be held in the garden. The final preparations have been completed. The Lin family also came to this big event. They have heard that it's all for the sake of one man who will appear here very soon. Already can't wait to find out who it is. As Logan appears on the grounds, his ex-wife notices him immediately and can't understand how this loser managed to get to such an event. The girl assumed that the guy had used her family's name to get here. Logan smiled and said that the family name didn't mean anything at this party. Of course, that made her angry, and she even complained to the guard that Logan had used her name. Because the guards were smart, they grabbed the woman by the arms and carried her off the premises. This was done because the ex-wife broke two rules. First, she made a big fuss, and second, she slandered a guest, which is strictly forbidden in these parts. Then Emily came on stage and made a statement to everyone. Logan is the guest of honor at tonight's event. Anyone who disagrees is fired. Now Ian realized Logan was the guest of honor everyone was talking about. Emily invited him to the stage, and once again publicly introduced the man. The guests were shocked to say the least. After all, this guy is a common swindler. How can such a queen have anything to do with him? The guests of honor began to demand a word from the guy as to why he just stood there silent. Logan immediately picked up the microphone and began his speech. He may not look worthy of Emily right now, but one day everyone standing here will change their minds. It was a very confident speech. The guests even started clapping and saying nice things about the guy. He didn't really expect to be on stage tonight, and he didn't prepare for it. But despite that, he managed to pull it off perfectly. As it turned out, the person who asked for the guy's speech was a close friend and business partner of Mr. Sien. His name is Oliver. Since their cooperation is unavoidable, today will be the perfect opportunity to get to know each other better. Mr. Oliver sells building materials in the city. Looking at this businessman, Logan noticed something strange. On Oliver's hand was a bracelet that radiated negative energy and brought people only grief and suffering. With all due respect, the guy asked to remove it. Now he has a very important task to do. He has to explain that people who have lost their lives do not need money anymore, and the living should not come into contact with such bracelets. If Oliver continues to wear it, he or anyone in his family could suffer greatly. Of course, such a high-ranking man would not believe the words of a common swindler, but rather his son, who gave him the bracelet. Oliver reacted to the kindness and care with only stupid anger, and immediately called his guard to deal with Logan. So help people, it's the same as usual. The ambulance immediately went to the battlefield to do his job. Beforehand, Oliver asked Mr. Sien not to hold a grudge. The girl did not want to interfere in this conflict, because she already put the guy in an uncomfortable position, and he is perfectly able to get out of such situations. But if he doesn't succeed this time, then he won't be able to get a foothold in this city. In any case, the girl would believe in him the most, and until the very end. Meanwhile, the fight started. Logan easily blocked the first blow of his opponent, and made a strong fist right in his nose. His opponent flew back with great speed. Now Oliver realized that Logan is not quite an ordinary guy, as it may seem at first glance, so he clearly panicked. The bandit decided to use magic to win the fight, and he still doesn't know that the guy has similar abilities. The first skill he decided to use was the combat energy punch. It unleashes a powerful energy flow in all directions. The bandit seemed to be at about the second or third level of chi purification, which was about the same level as Logan. But that was okay. The guy was confident that he would be able to handle this opponent. When the bandit realized that their forces were almost equal, he decided to act to the fullest. The second ability he possessed was to disappear. In his energy, for a certain period of time, the bandit could use invisibility. This time he did everything too trivial and attacked from the back. Logan was just waiting for an attack from where, so he was fully prepared to respond in the same way. They started a so-called tug-of-war, whose blow was stronger than the one that would stand. Logan was a little weaker this time, so he fell to his knees. The bandit decided to take advantage of this moment, charged his leg with magic, jumped into the air and prepared to deliver the strongest decisive blow. The blow was very powerful indeed, and after it a huge crater appeared on the battlefield. If the bandit managed to hit the guy with his foot, there was little chance to survive. Emily held on to the pendant the guy had given her, and only hoped for the best outcome. Judging by the bandit's smile, For some reason he was sure that Logan was no longer alive, but before he smiled, he had to be sure. Suddenly a hand appears out of the thick smoke and moves towards the mercenary, apparently not as good as one might think. The guy appeared to be alive, and overwhelmed by a great deal of anger. It was time to strike back. Logan grabbed both his hands, twisted them together, and kicked the thug straight upward with a hard kick, and then he was in for a not-so-gentle landing, body against the hard asphalt. It was an unqualified victory. The mercenary couldn't even move, but he said he recognized his defeat. This guy probably had more fractures than the others, and he would have to spend eternity in more. Cien was very happy about this victory. He didn't expect the guy to be so good at all. And Emily in turn was happy that her young man wasn't hurt. Despite the guy's extensive experience, Oliver still wasn't sure that the bracelet could bring harm to his family. Logan didn't make him believe it, but just warned him it wasn't about his family anyway. In that case, Oliver proposed a bet. If nothing bad happens in 3 days, the guy gets on his knees and apologizes, and if it does, it's the other way around. It would happen in front of the whole town. In that case, Logan agreed to accept the argument. Meanwhile, some people were watching him from the bushes. They didn't seem to have the best intentions. Somehow they managed to find out that the guy was at the 3rd stage of chi purification, which was not a terrible indicator for them, so they began to plan an assassination attempt. Meanwhile, the evening came, the party was in full swing, people were dancing and drinking. The guy's ex-wife showed up at the event again, but alone and on business. The grandfather gave a gift for the guy, and the girl brought it. He couldn't come himself because he's still physically very weak. He didn't want to seem rude to Sue's boyfriend and family, so he made such a small gift. Logan said that he accepts it, and to his ex-wife that she can be free. I wondered what was inside. The first thing I could see was an envelope, and an inscription to my dear son. There was also a keychain with a dragon on it. What could that mean? Logan had a rather strange reaction to this gift. Did Grandpa give a letter? What did he write there? Emily grabbed the guy's hand and told him not to open it here because there were too many strangers around. Best to do it later. The guy agreed, and the decision was made to read it after the party. When they arrived at the house, Emily showed the guy that there was a secret room in their house that they could go into and read there, so that definitely no one would see anything. The girl was so careful that even Logan started to get a little worried. It was just a letter. Okay, it was time to read it. In his letter, Lin asked the boy not to go to the capital and tried to find his mother. No matter how much you want to do it, but you must restrain yourself. The main thing to remember is that you have a special power, and your mom is a normal person. Her name is Mia. The future is blurry, but you must remember that you are the guardian of the dragon. The text was actually quite confusing, and there's a question of how to measure that power. Looks like this world isn't as simple as Logan imagined. There's still too much to learn. To keep his mind busy, he decides not to eat in the house for too long, but to go back to the party with his beloved. In fact, she's been waiting for him for a while. When suddenly, right in the center of the banquet, an unknown man runs in and says that there is trouble. Something has happened in the house. As soon as Mr. Oliver entered his house, his mistress went crazy and started waving a kitchen knife. This guy managed to escape to call for help. But even so, who can go there, and what can he do to help at all? Logan said he'd go there. Even if he couldn't look, he should at least take a look at what was going on, because he'd said right away that bracelet was a dangerous thing, and it was best to take it off right away. Emily grabbed his hand, smiled, and told him not to worry, everything would be all right. Logan smiled back and said that next to such a woman, he was no longer afraid in this world. And then immediately set out on the road, to get to Oliver's house as soon as possible. Meanwhile, in the house, the situation had settled down a bit. The guys had chained the crazy woman to the column. This method will work for a while, but it can't last forever. Don't worry, Oliver's already called in a specialist. Well, it's time to face it. Apparently the guy was right, it was the bracelet. As it turned out, Oliver wasn't too happy that it was Logan who had come to the rescue. The bracelet was still studying that negative energy that made people go crazy. If it wasn't removed now, it would be too late. Then his favorite son came down to the hall and started defending his gift, that he had brought it from the temple. How could such things just be thrown away? This temple is hundreds of kilometers away. Would someone who is so far away do harm on purpose? Logan looked at his son and asked him to tell the truth about where he had gotten the bracelet. As there was no clear answer, Logan decided to leave, but when these people came to him to ask for help, he would remind them of everything. Oliver was sure that everything would be fine after the boy left, but he was wrong, along with his son. Just then Jacob walked in. He had been called in to see the victim as soon as possible and try to treat her. Oliver was definitely shocked when the master said hello to Logan. They didn't know they knew each other. Jacob figured the guy couldn't handle the situation, so he immediately decided to ask how bad it was. Since Logan wasn't allowed to act, Jacob would try to go it alone. As soon as he tried to approach, the frantic mom tore the bonds she'd been chained with, the bracelet making her more and more powerful by the minute, a process that could go on indefinitely if it wasn't stopped. Jacob said that someone had possessed the woman and that his skills would not help. Oliver was very angry and wanted to beat up the master, because if something happened to his wife, he would never forgive a specialist who couldn't help. Jacob made it clear that Logan would be much stronger than he was, so he would have to ask him for help and everything would work out. In the end, because there were no more options, Oliver went to ask Logan for help. The guy immediately reminded him that he had promised him to kneel before him if something happened. For Oliver, this punishment seemed too strong, so he offered to solve this issue with days, for example with the sum of 50 million. It was actually a really impressive amount of money, but what to do when the money ran out? You had to put things in perspective. Looking around, Logan saw many beautiful shelves, the contents of which would cost much more than 50 million. It's not that it's hard to help the guy, it's just that he'll have to spend a larger amount of power, which is hard to recover later. In that case, Oliver offered to take the entire contents of those shelves if the problem could be solved. It was an offer that couldn't be refused, so Logan agreed without much thought. Now it was time for Oliver to do the most important thing, which was to take off the bracelet. Logan began to envelope it with his energy, thus suppressing its negative power, which from head to toe soaked the woman. Then the bracelet was destroyed, and at that moment the curse was completely gone from the girl. She was very weakened. Perhaps she would need a doctor to return to her normal state. Now the interesting question is where the son who gave his father this miracle bracelet went. He was already on his knees, calling himself a poor wretch, and begging forgiveness in front of everyone. Apparently because of his intense fear, he got the idea to escape from his own home. But this time the personal bodyguard worked perfectly and caught the little escaped lover. It would not be convenient to conduct interrogations in this place, so Logan asked to take this boy to his house. So they did, and in the dead of night, the boy was taken to Logan's villa, and there he was beaten a little, so that he would be more willing to give some valuable information. From that moment on, the bodyguard, whose name was Jack, said he would follow Logan, and he didn't even need a paycheck, just enough to feed him. How everything changed in an instant. Anyway, this son of mine met a man at the temple a month ago, who said this bracelet would protect the whole family for a whole year, and the guy agreed to take it, without even thinking about the fact that free cheese is only in the mousetrap. This all happened in the best temple in the country. Who would have thought there were such people in it? Usually the boy does not accept such gifts just like that, and from just anyone, as his family is engaged in business. With the man who gave the bracelet the boy was barely acquainted. He said that this bracelet was inherited from his older brother, who also wore it. The reason why he gave it to him was purely for a good cause, and after much questioning, he told me where to find an expert. Zonmingfu, he is one of the biggest clans in the city. Even though they work with dark energy, a lot of people went to them for help. So knowing the methods of this clan, the guy still went to them to ask for help. Yes, it is true, perhaps stupidly, but it is not every day that a person can be offered such help. And as for what kind of energy they use, what difference does it make who they pay if the essence of the work is the same? The kid didn't even realize it could turn out like this. Logan was convinced for the umpteenth time that he never understood rich people, and they obviously had their own ideas. Logan asked Jack to take the poor guy home. At first glance, this clan seems to be in the business of luring rich people into their trap, but if you think about it, isn't the Su family their goal? It's good that the guy took the initiative that night. If someone else had gone, most likely no one would have found out this information. Given the discovery at the construction site, Logan will never believe they don't lead on the move and he's on the Su family. As for suspects, you have to start with the Xianming clan. It's a really strong clan that specializes in curses. Their elder is at the top of his spiritual development, and their methods are always valid. This clan is also closely connected to the local bureaucracy, and is behind a lot of incidents that have been going on lately. From this we can conclude that the clan is just a tool in someone's hands. We need to deal with them to find out who is really behind the scenes, whose name they are hiding. But there's only one problem. So far the guy's not strong enough to pull this kind of thing off. But that was okay. With so many herbs, Logan would be able to make great progress by nightfall. The herbs looked good, but their quality was questionable, and they were not very useful. In the morning, the guy already had a 6th level of chi purification. Jack woke up early in the morning, and had time to clean the house. He was also told to tell him that Logan was invited to lunch at Mr. Xian's house. There was no reason to be there at noon. Since the bodyguard was behaving very well, the boy personally began to reassure himself about his health, and asked him whether he was eating or not, and where he had slept today. The food was all right, but the guard slept outside. It was not right. There were a lot of empty rooms in the house, so he could easily choose any of them and sleep there to avoid getting sick. Besides, Logan promised to show him a couple of exercises that would make his muscles hurt much less. He was insanely grateful for the accommodations. Since it was almost lunchtime, the guy got into his car and drove to Mr. Xian's house. Usually they just call him by his name, but today it was too formal. Something must have happened. Inside, Logan was met by Emily, and some guy who did next to her. The first thing he said was, "I'll never believe that a ragamuffin like you son saved Mr. Xian. Rude enough for a first meeting. The most important thing in treating a patient is quality ingredients, which apparently this guy has plenty of." Today he brought the old man a Tianshan snow lotus, which is a plant that can give a man life. I wonder what all the fuss is about. Logan's proven his credibility. In order not to fall face in the mud, the guy called this lotus some kind of rottenness, and took out of his pocket his pill of spiritual perfection, which he worked on all night. It significantly increased spiritual power. The show-off guy really thought about it. And then he called the pill a regular candy that they sell at the second school. They got into a big fight, and started calling each other some unpleasant words. Generally from the outside it looked like a fight between two little boys in kindergarten. Then this upstart let himself grab Emily's hand, and called himself the future son-in-law of the Su family. In his opinion, the fact that Logan saved Mr. Xian does not make him the main candidate. This guy also positioned himself as a very rich man. Both partners should be from good families, then they will never have money problems. It's the same thing again. Rich people only talk about money. They have forgotten about everything human. Are they really unable to think about something other than money? What's the point of a tank if the partners don't love each other? Moreover, the future is in talent and strength, not in money. The man was really pissed off for such hurtful words and a burn on his arm, so he wanted to settle the matter with his fists. Logan didn't even move, and this upstart broke his arm on his body, and that was the end of the fight. Even the bodyguards were shocked at the outcome.